The breaking point. The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, transmitted directly to the United Earth Defense Council's chambers in Geneva. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing High Marshal Kextar of the Draxian hegemony, his scaled face illuminated by the artificial light of his flagship's command center. Commander Natasha Volkov stood at attention, her weathered face revealing none of the tension that gripped the chamber. Beside her, Admiral James Rivera's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on the edge of the tactical display. "Your species has been granted sufficient time to consider our generous offer." Kextar's translated voice filled the chamber, each word precisely measured. "The hegemony requires your answer. Will humanity accept its place under our protection, or persist in this foolish notion of independence?" Volkov stepped forward, her voice steady. "High Marshal, humanity's position remains unchanged. We decline to surrender our sovereignty." The alien's multiple eyes narrowed, membranes sliding across their surface in what human xenologists had learned to recognize as contempt. "You continue to misunderstand, Commander. This is not a negotiation." "No," Volkov agreed, "it isn't." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the chamber in silence. Admiral Rivera moved to the central display, bringing up a tactical overlay of Earth's defense grid. "They'll strike soon," he said, his voice gravelly from years of command. "The question is where." The answer came 3 hours later. The Galileo research station, orbiting Jupiter's moon Europa, wasn't considered a military target. Its 2,000 civilian researchers and support staff focused on deep space astronomy and theoretical physics. The Draxian battle fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel without warning, their energy weapons already charged. The station's destruction was broadcast across every communication channel in the solar system, a message clear and cruel: submit or burn. In the aftermath, Volkov found herself in the Council's Strategic Command Center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the movement of Draxian forces across the outer solar system. Admiral Rivera stood at her side, his face illuminated by the red warning indicators that seemed to multiply by the minute. "They're testing us," Rivera said, manipulating the tactical display to show the approach vectors of multiple Draxian battle groups, "seeing how we'll respond to an atrocity." "They're about to learn," Volkov replied, her voice cold. She turned to address the assembled military leadership. "The hegemony believes they understand humanity. They think they've studied us, categorized us, determined our limitations. They see our relative youth as a spacefaring species and mistake it for weakness." She gestured to the display showing the remains of the Galileo station. "They believe this will break us. Instead, it will define us." Her eyes swept the room. "Initiate Operation Prometheus." The response was immediate. Throughout the solar system, hidden installations began powering up. Facilities buried in asteroids and concealed in the atmospheres of gas giants activated defense systems that had been prepared in secret for years. Dr. Rashid Karim, head of Earth's Quantum Defense Research, stepped forward. "Commander, the Phantom Fleet is ready. But we've never tested the system at this scale. The Draxians have forced our hand." Rivera interjected. "We either act now or lose everything." Volkov nodded. "Execute the operation." Across the solar system, quantum-entangled nodes began transmitting. The Draxian sensors suddenly detected thousands of new contacts, warships appearing from nowhere, emerging from what their instruments insisted was empty space. The Phantom Fleet, a masterwork of quantum deception that turned the hegemony's own advanced scanning technology against them. In the confusion, real Earth ships struck from hidden positions. The battle for Jupiter space began in earnest, with humanity revealing capabilities the Draxians had never suspected they possessed. Admiral Rivera watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction as the first reports of Draxian losses came in. "They thought we'd be easy prey," he said quietly. "They forgot that humanity has never taken kindly to bullies." "This is just the beginning," Volkov replied, studying the movement of forces across the system. They've started this war thinking they know all the rules. A small, fierce smile crossed her face. We're about to rewrite the rulebook. In the hours that followed, the true scope of humanity's preparation became clear. The Galileo station's destruction had triggered a response years in the making. While the Draxians had seen a young, relatively weak species, humanity had been quietly studying their potential adversaries, developing countermeasures, and preparing for the possibility of this very conflict. The Quantum Phantom fleet continued to wreak havoc, with Draxian battle coordination, their commanders unable to distinguish real threats from false signatures. Earth's actual warships struck with surgical precision, using attack patterns that seemed to anticipate Draxian tactical doctrine with uncanny accuracy. In the Strategic Command Center, Dr. Karim approached Volkov with a data tablet. Commander, the quantum deception network is performing beyond expectations. The Draxian fleet movements suggest they're completely overwhelmed by the Phantom signatures. Good, Volkov replied, but we need to press the advantage while we have it. They'll adapt eventually. She turned to Rivera. Admiral, implement the next phase. Let's show them what else humanity has been working on in secret. As the battle continued, the Draxian High Marshal watched in growing fury as his carefully planned assault fell into chaos. The humans were fighting in ways that defied all strategic logic, using technologies that shouldn't have been possible for such a young species. The war had begun, but it was already clear that the Draxian hegemony's assumptions about their opponent had been dangerously wrong. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were fighting back with capabilities and determination that would shake the foundations of galactic society. The breaking point had come, but it wasn't humanity that was breaking. The corridors of Luna Base Artemis hummed with activity as Dr. Rashid Karim hurried through the underground facility. 3 weeks had passed since the Galileo Station massacre, and humanity's initial success with the Quantum Phantom fleet had bought them precious time. But the Draxians were adapting, learning to filter out the false signatures. They needed something new. He entered the quantum labs to find Commander Volkov already waiting, her uniform bearing the subtle signs of too many hours without rest. Behind her, holographic displays showed the current state of the solar system, with red indicators marking Draxian fleet positions pushing steadily inward. "Tell me you have something," Volkov said without preamble. Karim gestured to a crystalline device floating in a containment field. "We've cracked it. The Draxian quantum communication system. We found their blind spot." Admiral Rivera entered the lab, his presence drawing immediate attention. "Explain it to me like I'm a cadet, Doctor." The Draxians use quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication across vast distances, Karim began, manipulating the holographic display to show complex wave patterns. It's incredibly sophisticated technology, but it has one critical weakness. They never considered someone might weaponize uncertainty itself. He brought up another display, showing the results of their latest experiments. "We've developed what we're calling quantum echo bombs. When detonated, they create a cascading wave of quantum uncertainty that temporarily severs all entangled communications within a massive radius. Their ships won't just lose contact with each other. Their internal systems will experience quantum state collapse." Volkov's eyes narrowed. "How long does the effect last?" "Minutes at most. But in space combat, minutes are an eternity." Rivera finished. "How soon can we deploy?" "The prototypes are ready. We've miniaturized the devices enough to fit them on our stealth drones." Volkov studied the tactical display, her mind already working through the possibilities. "Show me the effective radius." As Karim adjusted the display, Colonel Yuki Tanaka, commander of Earth's Special Operations Forces, stepped into the lab. Her presence was unexpected but welcome. If anyone could make effective use of this new weapon, it would be her stealth teams. "I have pilots ready," Tanaka said, studying the specifications. "We can begin immediate deployment if authorized." The next 12 hours were a blur of preparation. Under Tanaka's direction, stealth teams loaded the quantum echo bombs onto specially modified drones. The plan was audacious. They would target the largest Draxian fleet concentration in the asteroid belt, striking at the heart of their forward operating base. From the command center, Volkov watched as the operation began. The stealth drones, nearly invisible to all known detection systems, slipped through the gaps in Draxian patrol patterns. Colonel Tanaka's voice came through clear on the command channel, directing her teams with precision born of years of training. Echo team in position, awaiting final authorization. Volkov exchanged glances with Rivera. This would either be a turning point or a costly failure. Execute, she ordered. The quantum echo bombs detonated simultaneously across the Draxian fleet formation. The effect was immediate and devastating. Ships suddenly lost all coordination, their quantum-based systems experiencing cascading failures. Some vessels began firing blindly, hitting their own allies in the confusion. Multiple direct hits, Tanaka reported, her voice tightly controlled. Quantum disruption spreading exactly as predicted. Draxian fleet communications are completely dark. Rivera leaned forward, watching the chaos unfold. Launch Phase 2. Now. Earth's attack fleet, positioned in hiding behind Cirrus, burst into action. They struck the disorganized Draxian forces with overwhelming precision, targeting command ships and logistics vessels. Without their quantum communications, the legendary coordination of the Hegemony's fleet dissolved into disorder. In the aftermath, as damage reports flooded in, Dr. Karim worked frantically to analyze the data. The effect was even more widespread than we anticipated, he reported. Their quantum systems aren't just disrupted. They're experiencing sympathetic collapse across multiple sectors. It's like a chain reaction. Volkov allowed herself a small smile. They thought their technology made them invincible. They never considered it could become their greatest vulnerability. But victory came with a price. The Draxians, enraged by this unprecedented defeat, launched a series of retaliatory strikes against civilian targets across the outer colonies. Millions were forced to evacuate as habitats were destroyed and asteroids were bombarded into debris fields. In her private quarters, Volkov reviewed the casualty reports with Rivera. "They're trying to break our will," she said quietly. "Make us fear the cost of resistance." Rivera's response was grim. "They still don't understand us. Every attack like this only hardens our resolve." The quantum echo bombs had changed the nature of the war. But the Draxians were far from defeated. Reports indicated they were already working to adapt their systems, developing countermeasures against the new weapon. It was a race against time. Dr. Karim and his team worked around the clock, trying to stay ahead of Draxian adaptations. They knew their advantage would be temporary, but every day they could maintain it meant another day for humanity to strengthen its defenses and develop new strategies. Colonel Tanaka's stealth teams continued to strike at Draxian supply lines and command centers, using the chaos caused by the quantum disruptions to maximum effect. Her operators became legends among both humans and aliens, ghost warriors who could appear anywhere, strike with devastating precision, and vanish before the enemy could respond. In the Hegemony's high command, frustration turned to rage, and rage to fear. High Marshal Kekstar faced increasing pressure from his subordinates. How could a species so young, so seemingly primitive, prove so adaptable and dangerous? The answer eluded them, but the cost of underestimating humanity continued to rise. As the second month of war drew to a close, humanity had proven itself far more formidable than anyone had expected. But greater challenges lay ahead. The Draxians were calling in reinforcements from across their empire, assembling a force that would dwarf anything seen so far. In the quantum labs, Dr. Karim made a discovery that would change everything. Studying the data from their attacks, he found something unexpected in the quantum interference patterns. It wasn't just disrupting communications, it was creating ripples in space-time itself. "Commander," he called Volkov with barely contained excitement, "I think we found something. Something big." The war was entering a new phase, and humanity was about to reveal yet another surprise to their would-be conquerors. The silent strike had succeeded, but it was only the beginning of what humanity could do when pushed to its limits. In the depths of space, the quantum echoes continued to spread, carrying with them a message that would be heard across the galaxy. Humanity would not be conquered. They would not be broken. And they were just getting started. The enemy within. High Marshal Kextar stood before the Hegemony Council, his scaled armor bearing fresh battle marks from a recent human attack. The chamber, carved from a hollow asteroid at the heart of Draxian space, echoed with murmurs of discontent. Around him, representatives from the 27 species that comprised the hegemony watched with varying degrees of concern and hostility. The humans continue to defy expectations, he admitted, each word carefully measured. Their quantum echo weapons have disrupted our operations across 3 sectors. Our casualties are, he paused, mandibles clicking in frustration, significant. Ambassador Lyrax of the Meridian Concordat, a species that had joined the hegemony centuries ago, rose from her crystalline seat. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed with barely contained anger. You promised us a swift victory, Marshal. Instead, we watch our ships fall to primitive humans using our own technology against us. The Concordat questions the wisdom of this war. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices as other representatives began voicing their own concerns. Kextar's secondary hearts pumped faster as he fought to maintain composure. The political structure of the hegemony, always delicate, was showing dangerous signs of strain. Meanwhile, on Earth, Commander Volkov reviewed intelligence reports with growing interest. The quantum echo attacks had done more than just disrupt Draxian military operations. They had cracked open political fissures within the hegemony itself. Look at these transmissions, she said to Admiral Rivera, highlighting intercepted communications. The Meridian Concordat is threatening to withdraw their fleet support. 3 other member species are making similar noises. Rivera studied the data, his expression thoughtful. The hegemony maintains control through technological superiority. We've shown their technology isn't invincible. Dr. Karim entered the command center, accompanied by Colonel Tanaka. The scientist's eyes were bright with excitement. Commander, we've made a breakthrough. The quantum echoes aren't just disrupting their communications, they're creating microscopic tears in the fabric of space-time. With proper calibration, we might be able to use these tears to our advantage. Explain, Volkov demanded. We can turn their own faster-than-light corridors against them, create quantum turbulence that makes their primary travel routes unusable. We can isolate entire sectors of their empire from each other. Tanaka stepped forward, her tactical mind already working through the implications. If we can disrupt their FTL networks, we can force them to fight multiple isolated battles instead of bringing their full force to bear. The strategy took shape quickly. Earth's forces began targeting key FTL corridors with modified quantum echo bombs, creating zones of impossible navigation. The effect was devastating. Draxian supply lines collapsed, reinforcements were delayed or lost in transit, and coordination between fleet elements became nearly impossible. Within the hegemony, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The Meridian Concordat officially withdrew their support, recalling their ships to protect their own territories. Other species began questioning their allegiance to an empire that suddenly seemed far less invincible. High Marshal Kextar faced a crisis. His own military advisors were split, some advocating for immediate escalation, while others suggested seeking terms with the humans. The reputation of Draxian invincibility, maintained for centuries, was crumbling. In a secure chamber deep within his flagship, Kextar met with his most trusted commander, war leader Vexhall. The humans must have help, Vexhall insisted. No young species could develop such weapons independently. Your assumption of outside aid is easier to accept than the truth, Kextar replied bitterly. We underestimated them, catastrophically. On Earth, the war effort continued to evolve. Dr. Karim's team made further refinements to the quantum echo technology, while Colonel Tanaka's Special Operations Forces struck with increasing sophistication. But the human leaders knew better than to celebrate too early. They're adapting, Volkov observed during a strategy session. Each quantum echo attack is slightly less effective than the last. They're learning to shield their systems. Then we need to hit them harder, Rivera argued, while we still have the advantage. The decision was made to launch Operation Shatterpoint, a coordinated attack designed to split the hegemony's territory into isolated sectors. Multiple strike teams would deploy simultaneously, targeting every major FTL corridor in Draxian space. As the operation began, something unexpected happened. Ships from the Meridian Concordat began providing tactical information about Draxian fleet movements. Other former hegemony members followed suit, secretly offering aid to the humans who had proven strong enough to resist their former masters. The political upheaval within the hegemony reached a critical point when the Sentinel Collective, one of the oldest member species, formally denounced the war. Their ambassadors' words, broadcast across all frequencies, were devastating. The hegemony claims to bring order to the galaxy, yet launches unprovoked war against a species whose only crime was refusing to submit. We will not support this anymore. High Marshal Kextar watched his political support crumble as Operation Shatterpoint succeeded beyond human expectations. The carefully maintained FTL network that had held the hegemony together for centuries was in chaos. Ships disappeared into quantum turbulence, entire fleet groups found themselves stranded, and communication between sectors became increasingly impossible. In her quarters aboard the Earth flagship Prometheus, Commander Volkov received a secure transmission from an unexpected source. The Meridian Ambassador Lyrax appeared on her screen, her bioluminescent patterns forming complex patterns of respect and caution. "Commander," the ambassador began, "what your species has accomplished is unprecedented. The hegemony's grip on power is weakening. Many of us believe it is time for a change in the galactic order." Volkov listened carefully as Lyrax outlined a proposal that could reshape the political landscape of known space. The war had evolved beyond a simple conflict between humans and Draxians. It had become a catalyst for revolution within the hegemony itself. Dr. Karim's voice came through on the emergency channel, interrupting the diplomatic discussion. "Commander, we've detected massive quantum fluctuations in the Draxian home system. They're attempting something big." The tactical displays showed a disturbing pattern. The Draxians, desperate and cornered, were gathering their remaining loyal forces for one massive strike. But the quantum readings suggested they were tampering with forces they barely understood in their attempt to counter human technology. "They're going to tear reality apart if they continue," Karim warned. "The quantum harmonics are becoming dangerously unstable." The war had reached a critical juncture. Humanity had proven itself far more formidable than anyone had expected, but victory still hung in the balance. As both sides prepared for what could be the final confrontation, the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galactic community hung in the balance. The enemy within the hegemony had been revealed, not just the political fractures, but the fatal flaw of arrogance that had led them to this point. Now, humanity had to prepare for the Draxians' final desperate gambit, knowing that the next battle could reshape the very fabric of space-time itself. The turning point. The quantum sensors aboard Earth's defense platforms screamed warnings as reality itself began to warp around the Draxian home system. Dr. Karim's hands flew across holographic controls as he attempted to make sense of the readings. The patterns were unlike anything he'd ever seen. Space-time was being twisted into impossible configurations. "They're trying to weaponize the quantum tiers we created," he reported to Commander Volkov and Admiral Rivera. "But they're being reckless, pushing the technology far beyond safe limits." The tactical display showed the Draxian fleet consolidating around a massive construction in orbit around their homeworld. Energy readings from the structure were off the charts, sending ripples through the quantum fabric of space. "They're desperate," Rivera observed grimly. "Cornered animals are the most dangerous." Volkov turned to Colonel Tanaka, who had just arrived with her own disturbing intelligence. "What have your stealth teams discovered?" The Draxians are calling it the Quantum Forge, Tanaka reported, bringing up reconnaissance footage. They're attempting to create a controlled quantum singularity that would allow them to bypass our destruction of their FTL networks. But the technology is unstable. Our scientists estimate a 60% chance it will collapse into a black hole if activated. Ambassador Lyrax's hologram materialized in the command center, her bioluminescence pulsing with urgency. Commander Volkov, the Meridian Concordat has confirmed your findings. The Quantum Forge threatens not just your system, but the entire sector. Multiple former hegemony species are pledging support to stop this madness. The situation had reached a critical point. The Draxians' desperate gambit could either restore their dominance or destroy everything they had built. Either way, humanity had to act fast. Dr. Karim stepped forward, his expression both excited and terrified. Commander, I think I know how we can stop them. The quantum echoes we've been creating. They're not just disrupting communications and FTL travel. They're creating a network of quantum entanglement across space itself. If we can use that network. Speak plainly, Doctor. Volkov interrupted. What are you suggesting? We can turn their own weapon against them. Create a controlled quantum cascade that would collapse the forge before they can activate it. But we'd need to get close, dangerously close. Rivera studied the tactical projections. The Draxians have assembled their entire remaining loyal fleet around the forge. Getting within range would be nearly impossible. Not for my teams, Tanaka interjected. We've mapped the quantum distortions. There are gaps in their sensor coverage, tiny ones, but they exist. The plan came together quickly. While the combined Earth Meridian fleet would launch a frontal assault as a distraction, Colonel Tanaka's stealth teams would slip through the chaos to deliver a specially modified quantum echo device. The timing would have to be perfect. In the hours before the operation began, Commander Volkov received an unexpected transmission. High Marshal Kekstar himself appeared on the command screen, his scales dulled with stress and fatigue. You've proven yourselves worthy adversaries, he said without preamble. But you cannot comprehend what you're interfering with. The Quantum Forge will restore order to the galaxy. Order? Volkov replied coldly. You're willing to risk the destruction of entire systems to maintain your control. That's not order, Marshal. That's tyranny. You're young, Kekstar hissed. You don't understand the chaos that existed before the hegemony. We brought peace. You brought submission. There's a difference. The transmission ended abruptly. Moments later, the Quantum Forge began powering up, its energy signature distorting space in visible waves. All ships, execute Operation Quantum Break, Volkov ordered. May whatever gods exist have mercy on us all. The battle erupted across the Draxian home system. Earth ships, now joined by vessels from multiple former hegemony species, engaged the Draxian fleet in a massive confrontation. Energy weapons carved lines of fire through space as quantum torpedoes created localized distortions in reality itself. Colonel Tanaka's stealth ships slipped through the chaos, using the quantum distortions as cover. Each vessel carried a piece of Dr. Karim's modified device, too dangerous to transport assembled. In the heart of the battle, Dr. Karim monitored the quantum fluctuations with growing alarm. The forge is reaching critical levels, he reported. If they activate it now. A massive energy surge interrupted him. The quantum forge began to pulse with impossible light, its structure warping as it drew power from the fabric of space-time itself. Tanaka. Status. Volkov demanded. In position, came the colonel's calm reply. Device assembly complete. Awaiting your order. Volkov looked to Karim, who nodded grimly. The calculations are as good as they'll ever be. But, Commander, this could go very wrong. We're out of options, Rivera said quietly. They'll activate the forge in minutes. Volkov took a deep breath. Colonel Tanaka. Execute. The modified quantum echo device activated, creating a cascading wave of quantum disruption that interfaced with the network of tears and distortions they'd created throughout the war. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The quantum forge's energy signature began to fluctuate wildly as the cascade interfered with its carefully calibrated fields. Alerts blared across all frequencies as the massive structure started to tear itself apart. "High Marshal," Volkov broadcast on all channels. "Shut it down now, or you'll lose everything." For a moment, it seemed Kextar would choose destruction over defeat. But as sections of the forge began to implode, survival instinct finally overcame pride. All power to containment. His voice thundered across the frequencies. "Shut it down. Shut it all down." The quantum forge's death throes lasted nearly an hour. When it finally fell silent, the quantum readings slowly began to stabilize. The gambit had worked. Barely. In the aftermath, as ships from both sides retrieved survivors and assessed damage, Commander Volkov received another transmission from Kextar. The High Marshal looked aged, defeated. "The Hegemony Council is convening," he said quietly. "They're calling for negotiations. It seems we have much to learn about strength and about wisdom." Aboard the Earth flagship, celebrations were tempered by the knowledge of how close they'd come to catastrophe. Dr. Karim's team was already analyzing the data from the quantum cascade, understanding that they'd only scratched the surface of what was possible. "We've changed everything," Karim said to Volkov as they watched the cleanup begin. "Our understanding of quantum mechanics, space-time itself. Nothing will be the same after this." "That was always the Draxians' mistake," Volkov replied. "They thought they could keep the galaxy static, unchanging. They forgot that growth comes from change, from challenge." She paused, watching as ships from former enemy species worked together to stabilize the quantum tiers in space, and sometimes from conflict. Rewriting the rules. 3 months after the Quantum Forge incident, Commander Volkov stood in the newly constructed Galactic conclave chamber on Luna. The circular room, with its transparent dome showing Earth hanging in the black sky above, represented something unprecedented, a true interstellar democracy. Representatives from 23 species, including both former hegemony members and independent civilizations, gathered to sign the Quantum Accords. The document wasn't just a peace treaty, it was a complete reimagining of how spacefaring species would interact. High Marshal Kextar, now serving as the interim representative of a drastically reformed Draxian government, approached the central podium. His once immaculate armor was simpler now, the signs of status and dominance replaced by markers of diplomatic service. "For centuries," he began, his translator conveying the complex harmonics of his native speech, "the hegemony maintained what we called peace through strength. We were wrong. The humans showed us that true strength comes not from dominance, but from adaptation, innovation, and cooperation." Admiral Rivera, standing beside Volkov, spoke quietly. "Never thought I'd see a Draxian admit to being wrong about anything. Nothing like nearly causing the collapse of space-time to give you a new perspective," Volkov replied dryly. Dr. Karim's presentation was next. The quantum physicist had become something of a celebrity among both human and alien scientists for his groundbreaking work during the war. The holographic displays came to life, showing the network of quantum echoes that still permeated space. "What we initially developed as a weapon has shown us something remarkable," he explained. "The quantum echo network offers possibilities we never imagined. Fast, secure communication across vast distances, clean energy generation, even the potential for controlled space-time manipulation for safer, faster-than-light travel." Colonel Tanaka, now heading the Joint Species Task Force responsible for containing remaining quantum distortions, added her own insights. "The network also serves as an early warning system. Any large-scale military buildup creates detectable quantum disturbances. It's become impossible for any species to secretly prepare for war." The implications were clear. The very technology that had helped humanity resist conquest had created a framework for lasting peace, not through force, but through transparency and mutual dependence. Ambassador Lurax of the Meridian Concordat rose to speak. The humans' greatest victory wasn't military, she said, her bioluminescent patterns forming complex patterns of respect and optimism. It was showing us that progress doesn't come from controlling change, but from embracing it. In the months that followed, the changes accelerated. The quantum echo network, now carefully maintained by a coalition of species, became the foundation for a new era of interstellar cooperation. Trade routes reopened, cultural exchanges flourished, and scientific collaboration led to breakthroughs that benefited all. The Draxians, perhaps surprisingly, became some of the strongest advocates for the new system. Their technological expertise, freed from the constraints of military dominance, found new expression in peaceful applications. They worked closely with human scientists to understand and control the quantum phenomena they had once tried to weaponize. 1 year after the war's end, Commander Volkov stood on the observation deck of the new quantum research station orbiting Mars. Dr. Karim was showing her the latest results from their experiments. "We're learning to tune the quantum echoes," he explained excitedly. "Create stable corridors through space-time without the risks of traditional FTL travel. The possibilities are endless." "And the risks?" Volkov asked, ever mindful of the lessons learned from the Quantum Forge disaster. "That's the beauty of it," Karim replied. "The network itself acts as a stabilizing influence. Any dangerous manipulation of space-time creates warning signatures that can be detected and counteracted immediately." The door slid open as Admiral Rivera entered, accompanied by a young Draxian scientist. The sight of human and Draxian working together was no longer unusual, but it still carried a powerful symbolism. "The joint fleet exercises were successful," Rivera reported. "The new quantum navigation systems are performing better than expected. We're seeing coordination levels that would have been impossible a year ago." The Draxian scientist, Texri, added her own observations. "What impresses me most is how quickly different species have adapted to working together. The humans' approach to problem-solving has proven infectious." Volkov smiled slightly. "We had good teachers, too. The Draxians' technical expertise, the Meridians' understanding of quantum mechanics. Everyone contributed something unique. From the observation window, they could see ships from a dozen different species moving in careful patterns, conducting joint exercises that would have been unthinkable during the hegemony's reign. Each vessel's quantum signature was clearly visible to the others, a constant reminder of their interconnectedness. The war had changed everything, but not in the way anyone had expected. The hegemony's fall hadn't led to chaos, but to a new kind of order, one based on cooperation rather than control. Humanity's resistance had evolved into something far more powerful than military victory, a revolution in how civilized species interacted. In her private moments, Volkov sometimes reflected on how close they'd come to destruction. The Quantum Forge incident could have ended very differently. But in the end, it wasn't superior firepower or even superior technology that had won the day. It was humanity's fundamental nature, the ability to adapt, to innovate, and most importantly, to imagine a better way. The quantum echoes continued to ripple through space, a constant reminder of the war that had changed everything. But now they carried messages of cooperation rather than conflict, of discovery rather than destruction. Humanity had written new rules for the galaxy, and for once, everyone was willing to play by them. As the Earth turned slowly below the station, Volkov received a notification. Another species had requested membership in the conclave. The galaxy was changing, growing, evolving. And humanity, the species that had dared to challenge the old order, was helping to guide that evolution. "We chose war," she murmured, remembering the fateful decision that had started everything. "But in the end, we wrote something better than a rulebook. We wrote a new future." The quantum network pulsed with activity, carrying the combined knowledge and aspirations of dozens of civilizations. In the depths of space, the echoes of humanity's stand against tyranny continued to resonate, reminding all who heard them that the greatest strength lies not in domination, but in the courage to imagine and fight for something better. The old order was gone, replaced by something new and dynamic. And in the end, that was humanity's greatest victory, not defeating an empire, but helping to build a galaxy where empires were no longer necessary.